The massive warship shuddered as another blast tore through its hull. Commander Jake Harrison gripped the controls of his fighter craft, weaving through the debris field that had once been the pride of Earth's fleet. The Vorthak Empire had come without warning, their crystalline ships emerging from hyperspace like shards of death itself. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Harrison. Form up on me," Jake commanded through gritted teeth. Only silence answered back. He was alone now, the last of his unit still breathing in the cold vacuum of space. The enemy mothership loomed ahead, a fortress of alien technology that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Its surface rippled with energy shields that had proven impervious to conventional weapons. But Jake had one last card to play, an experimental antimatter torpedo his ship carried, meant for testing, not combat. As he dodged another volley of plasma fire, Jake's sensors picked up something unexpected. A smaller Vorthak vessel, elegant and adorned with royal insignia, was breaking away from the main fleet. It moved erratically, trailing smoke and sparks. Someone important was trying to escape the battle. Jake faced a choice: attack the mothership with his single torpedo, possibly turning the tide of battle, or pursue the damaged royal vessel. His military training screamed at him to go for the strategic target, but something else, some instinct he couldn't name, pulled his attention to the fleeing ship. The royal vessel suddenly lurched, its engines failing completely. It began spiraling toward the nearby planet's atmosphere, a death sentence for anyone aboard. Jake watched as escape pods launched from the dying ship, most burning up immediately in the atmospheric entry. One pod, larger and more heavily shielded than the others, maintained its trajectory. "Damn it," Jake muttered, pulling his fighter into a steep dive. He couldn't explain why, but he had to follow that pod. The pursuit took him through the planet's upper atmosphere, his fighter's shields screaming in protest. The Royal Escape Pod was built for comfort, not atmospheric entry at these speeds. Its heat shields were failing, the craft beginning to glow cherry red. Jake did something insane. He positioned his fighter directly beneath the pod, using his own shields to absorb some of the heat. His ship's computer wailed warnings as systems began to overheat. The fighter's frame groaned under the stress, but he held position. Together, the two ships plummeted toward the planet's surface. Jake's shields failed first, leaving his fighter exposed to the burning atmosphere. Pain shot through him as the cockpit temperature soared, his flight suit's cooling systems overwhelmed. Through blurred vision, he saw a vast ocean approaching fast. With the last of his strength, Jake fired his retro thrusters, slowing both ships just enough. They hit the water like meteors, the impact knocking him unconscious. When Jake awoke, he was floating in his emergency life raft, his fighter nowhere to be seen. The alien pod bobbed nearby, its hatch blown open. Without thinking, he swam toward it, driven by the same inexplicable urge that had brought him here. Inside the pod, he found her. She was unlike any Vorthak he'd seen in the intelligence briefings. Where the warrior caste stood 8 feet tall with chitinous armor, she was perhaps 6.5 feet, her skin a deep purple that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Delicate, crystalline structures grew from her temples like a crown, and her face, while alien, held a beauty that transcended species. She wasn't breathing. Jake's medical training kicked in. Different species or not, he had to try. He pulled her from the pod onto his raft, checking for any signs of life. Her physiology was different, but he could feel what might be a pulse beneath skin that felt like warm silk. Working from basic principles, he began chest compressions, hoping her anatomy was similar enough. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she coughed, expelling water that glowed faintly blue. Her eyes opened, 4 of them, arranged in perfect symmetry, each a different shade of violet. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak chirping sound before passing out again. Jake wrapped her in his emergency blanket, noting how her skin seemed to regulate its own temperature, despite the cold ocean spray. For 3 days, they drifted. Jake shared his emergency rations, unsure if she could even digest human food, but she managed to keep down the protein bars and water. She grew stronger, watching him with those remarkable eyes whenever he wasn't looking at the horizon for rescue. On the 3rd night, as Jake dozed fitfully, she finally spoke. Her voice was like music, each word carrying harmonics human vocal cords could never produce. "Why?" she asked in accented but clear English. Jake started, nearly falling off the raft. "You speak our language?" "I study before war. I try to understand your people." She struggled to sit up, the blanket falling away to reveal clothing that seemed to be made of living light. "But why save me? I am enemy." Jake found he didn't have a good answer. It seemed like the right thing to do. She stared at him with all 4 eyes, as if trying to see into his soul. "My people say humans are primitive, violent, no honor." She paused, her lower eyes closing while the upper ones remained fixed on him. "You used your ship as shield. You could have died." "Yeah, well," Jake shrugged, uncomfortable with her intense gaze. "Maybe your people don't know us as well as they think." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I am Zarathis, 3rd daughter of the Eternal Throne, princess of the Vorthak Empire." Jake nearly choked on the water he was drinking. He'd saved Vorthak royalty. The implications made his head spin. "I'm Jake Harrison, commander in Earth Defense Force, or I was anyway." "You still are," Zara said softly. "Warriors who sacrifice for others do not stop being warriors." They talked through the night. Jake learned that not all Vorthak supported the war. Zara had been traveling to a neutral planet, trying to negotiate a peace treaty in secret when the battle erupted around her. Her own escort had fled, leaving her to die. "My elder sisters want conquest," she explained, her skin darkening with what Jake was beginning to recognize as sadness. "They see your species as resources to be harvested. But I have studied your history, your art, your music. You are more than they believe." "Tell that to your fleet up there," Jake said, gesturing at the stars where the battle likely continued. "If I could, I would." She pulled her knees to her chest, a surprisingly human gesture. "But 3rd daughters have no voice in the Empire. We are ornaments, married off for alliances." Jake watched her, seeing not an alien princess, but a young woman trapped by circumstances beyond her control. "That's why you were trying to make peace on your own?" She nodded, all 4 eyes glistening with what might have been tears. "I thought if I could show proof of your humanity, evidence that you were worth more than slavery or death." She trailed off, the futility of her mission apparent. "You risked everything for people you don't even know," Jake said quietly. "As did you," she replied, looking at him with something like wonder. "Your torpedo could have destroyed our command ship. Instead, you saved one enemy life." They were rescued the next day, but not by whom Jake expected. A Vorthak shuttle descended from the clouds, its weapons trained on their small raft. Jake moved protectively in front of Zara, though he knew it was useless against plasma cannons. The shuttle's ramp lowered, revealing Vorthak warriors in full battle armor. They chittered rapidly in their language, which Jake couldn't understand. But Zara's responses grew increasingly heated. Finally, she stood, shedding the emergency blanket and revealing her full royal bearing. One of the warriors, apparently the leader, removed his helmet. His face was scarred, one of his 4 eyes missing. He spoke at length, gesturing repeatedly at Jake with what looked like barely contained violence. Zara's skin flushed a deep crimson, a color Jake hadn't seen before. She spoke a single word, sharp and commanding. The warriors stepped back, lowering their weapons. "What's happening?" Jake asked. They want to execute you, Zara said matter-of-factly. I have invoked the right of preservation. As the one who saved my life, you are under my protection. And they'll honor that? They have no choice. It is our oldest law. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. But you must come with us. You are now bound to me until the debt is repaid. Jake looked at the warriors, then back at Zara. He thought of Earth, of the war still raging, of everything he was leaving behind. But he also thought of those 3 days on the raft, of conversations that had shown him the enemy was not a monolith of evil. All right, he said. Let's go. As they boarded the shuttle, Zara took his hand, a gesture that made the warriors stiffen in shock. You may regret this, she whispered. Maybe, Jake replied. But somehow I don't think so. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them toward an uncertain future. Through the viewport, Jake watched the ocean fall away below, taking with it his old life. He'd saved an enemy princess, and in doing so had perhaps found something worth more than victory in battle, a chance for understanding between 2 species locked in a senseless war. But the hardest part was yet to come. The Vorthak Empire awaited, and with it, challenges that would test the bond forged between a human soldier and an alien princess on a life raft in the middle of an alien sea. The Vorthak capital ship was unlike anything Jake had imagined. The corridors seemed to breathe, walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the presence of passers-by. He walked beside Zara, acutely aware of the hostile stares from every Vorthak they passed. His human form, small and fragile compared to the towering warriors, marked him as prey in a ship full of predators. Stay close, Zara murmured, her upper eyes scanning ahead while her lower ones watched their flanks. News of my survival has spread, but not all will respect the right of preservation. They entered a vast chamber where the walls curved up into darkness, covered in what looked like living stars. At the center sat a figure that made Jake's blood run cold. The queen of the Vorthak Empire was ancient beyond measure, her crystalline crown grown so large it required supports. Her 4 eyes, each the size of Jake's fist, fixed on him with an intensity that felt like physical weight. So, the queen spoke, her voice resonating through the chamber. This is the human who pulled my wayward daughter from death's embrace. She leaned forward, studying Jake like a specimen. Kneel. Jake remained standing. Zara's skin flashed warning colors, but he met the queen's gaze steadily. On Earth, we don't kneel to those who invade our homes. The chamber erupted in angry chittering. Guards stepped forward, weapons humming to life, but the queen raised one delicate hand, silencing them. Courage or foolishness, she mused. Tell me, human, do you know what you have cost me by saving her? A daughter's life seems like a gain, not a cost, Jake replied. The queen's laugh was like breaking glass. Spoken like a species that breeds without thought. Zara was traveling to commit treason. Her death would have been unfortunate but acceptable. Her survival, protected by our most sacred law, is complicated. Zara stepped forward. Mother, Silence. The queen's word cracked like a whip. You will be dealt with later. For now, I am curious about this human who speaks to queens as equals. She gestured, and a hologram appeared between them, showing Earth surrounded by Vorthak ships. Your world burns, Commander Harrison. Your fleets are scattered. Within days, your species will kneel or perish. Yet you saved one of those who orchestrate your destruction. Why? Jake studied the hologram, his heart sinking at the devastation, but he kept his voice steady. Because in that moment, she wasn't my enemy. She was just someone who needed help. Sentiment, one of the Queen's advisors spat. This is why humans are weak. Is it? Jake turned to face the advisor, a scarred warrior twice his height. Your princess tried to make peace, That takes more strength than firing weapons from orbit. The advisor's 4 eyes narrowed. You dare? He dares because he can, Zara interjected. The right of preservation makes him untouchable. He speaks with my voice. The Queen studied this interaction with interest. How fascinating. The prey lectures the predator on strength. She rose from her throne, moving with a grace that belied her age. Very well. You have 1 lunar cycle to prove your worth, human. Fail, and the right of preservation ends with your life. Worth to whom? Jake asked. To me, to the Empire. To your protector. The Queen's smile revealed teeth like crystal shards. Survive that long, and perhaps we shall discuss this peace my daughter foolishly sought. They were dismissed with a wave. As they left the chamber, Zara's skin had paled to almost white. You should not have challenged her, she whispered. Someone needs to, Jake replied. How long is a lunar cycle? 40 of your days, if you survive that long. She led him through more corridors to a section of the ship that felt different, warmer somehow. These are my quarters. You will stay here. The space was vast by human standards, filled with plants that chimed softly in harmonious tones. The walls displayed scenes from various worlds, some Jake recognized from Earth's broadcasts. You really did study us, he said, pausing before a reproduction of Van Gogh's Starry Night rendered in living light. Beauty transcends species, Zara replied. She touched a wall panel and a section reformed into furniture suitable for human physiology. I apologize for my mother. She sees the universe in terms of strength and weakness. And you? I see potential. She moved to what appeared to be a window, but was actually a real-time display of space outside. Earth hung in the distance, blue and beautiful, despite the scars of war. Your species creates art while facing extinction. You show mercy to enemies. You have something we lost long ago. What's that? Hope without guarantee. She turned to him, all 4 eyes reflecting Earth's light. My people live for millennia. We plan in centuries, think in eons. But you live each day as if it matters. It does matter, Jake said. It's all we have. Over the following days, Jake learned more about Vorthak society. They were not the monolithic conquerors he'd believed. Artists, scientists, philosophers, they existed, but were overshadowed by the warrior caste that had dominated since their last great war centuries ago. Zara introduced him to others who questioned the Empire's path. A scientist named Korvax, whose research into human neural patterns had convinced him they were truly sentient, not the clever animals the Empire claimed. A poet named Lys, whose work had been banned for suggesting other species had souls. But for every sympathizer, there were a dozen who saw Jake as walking blasphemy. The right of preservation protected him from direct harm, but not from accidents. A gravity plate malfunction nearly crushed him. His food synthesizer produced poison instead of nutrients. Environmental controls in his section glitched, flooding the area with atmosphere toxic to humans. Each time Zara intervened, her fury terrible to behold. They test us, she explained after the 5th attempt. They hope to make you flee, breaking the bond of preservation. I'm not going anywhere, Jake assured her, though his hands shook from the latest near-death experience. On the 15th day, everything changed. Zara burst into their quarters, her skin cycling through colors Jake had never seen. The fleet at Earth has been destroyed, she said. Jake's heart leaped. Earth's forces? No. She touched the wall display, bringing up tactical data. A third party. Ships unlike anything in our databases. They appeared from nowhere, disabled our fleet in minutes, then vanished. The data showed energy signatures that made no sense, weapons that seemed to violate physics as both species understood it. Jake studied the readings, a memory tickling the back of his mind. "I've seen this before," he said slowly. 3 years ago, Deep Space Patrol. We encountered an object that gave off similar readings. Command classified it, told us to forget." Zara's upper eyes widened. "You think your people have been hiding something?" "Not hiding. Maybe not understanding." He traced the energy patterns on the display. "What if neither of us is alone out here? What if something else has been watching?" Their investigation was interrupted by an empire-wide alert. The Queen commanded all to attend the Great Assembly. Jake and Zara arrived to find thousands of Vorthak gathered. The chamber expanded to accommodate them all. On the central platform, the Queen stood with her 2 elder daughters, Moralyn, commander of the military, and Vera Thys, keeper of technology. Both looked at Zara with undisguised contempt. "Citizens of the Empire," the Queen began, "we face an unprecedented threat. Our forces at Earth have been neutralized by an unknown power. Some suggest retreat. Others, including my eldest, advocate total war, not just against Earth, but against any who would challenge us." Moralyn stepped forward, her scarred carapace testament to countless battles. "We are Vorthak. We do not yield to shadows and tricks. Give me the full might of our armada, and I will burn Earth and these interlopers alike." The crowd roared approval, but Vera Thys raised a hand for silence. "Technology, not rage, will save us. My research into the attack suggests weapons beyond our current understanding. We must adapt or perish." "And what of our youngest sister?" Moralyn sneered. "Still playing with her pet human?" Zara moved to speak, but Jake stepped forward first. The crowd hissed at his presumption, but the right of preservation held them back. "You want to know about the unknown force?" he called out, his voice carrying in the vast chamber. "I might have answers, but I'll only share them if the Empire agrees to discuss peace with Earth." The reaction was immediate and violent. Guards moved forward, the crowd bayed for his blood, and even the Queen's composure cracked. But Zara moved to stand beside him, her presence a shield. "He speaks with my voice," she declared, "and he speaks truth. We face an enemy that defeated our best in minutes. Perhaps it's time to consider that our greatest strength might not be in conquest, but in alliance." Moralyn laughed bitterly. "Alliance with prey? You shame our bloodline, sister." "No," Zara replied, her skin flushing with determination. "I honor it by evolution. We once were prey ourselves, remember? We survived by adapting, by growing beyond our limitations. Now we face a choice: evolve again, or become extinct, like the civilizations we've conquered." The Queen raised her hand, bringing silence. "The human has 40 days by our law. Let him prove his worth by solving this mystery. If he succeeds, we will consider his proposal." As the assembly dissolved, Jake found himself surrounded by those whose fear outweighed their hatred. Scientists, tacticians, even some warriors approached with questions. The unknown threat had shaken their certainty, and suddenly, the small, fragile human who dared speak to queens didn't seem so weak. Later in their quarters, Zara sat beside him, exhausted. "You've given them something they haven't felt in centuries," she said. "What's that?" "Doubt." She smiled, a curious expression on her alien features. "Doubt in their own superiority. It might be enough to save both our peoples." Jake thought of Earth, of the mysterious force that had intervened, of the challenges still ahead. 25 days left," he said. "We'll face them together," Zara promised, and for the first time since leaving Earth, Jake believed they might actually succeed. The research consumed their days and nights. Jake and Zara worked alongside Korvax and a growing team of scientists who had begun to see past their prejudices. The mystery of the unknown force that had destroyed the Vorthak fleet proved more complex with each discovery. "Look at this," Jake said, projecting his findings onto the main display. 3 years ago, my patrol encountered an object. 2 years ago, a Vorthax science vessel reported similar anomalies near the Kepler systems. 6 months ago, unusual gravitational distortions in the neutral zone. Korvax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. A pattern of observation. Someone has been watching both our civilizations. Not just watching, Zara added, her skin shifting to the golden hue of concentration. Testing. Each encounter pushed boundaries, measured responses. Jake felt a chill despite the warm air. Like a scientist studying lab rats before an experiment. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Liszt, the banned poet, arrived at their lab with ancient texts. I thought these were mythology, she said, spreading crystalline tablets across the table. Stories from before we achieved spaceflight, but the descriptions... Jake studied the symbols, unable to read them until Zara translated. The texts spoke of visitors from beyond the void, beings of pure thought who had judged civilizations and found them wanting. Those who failed their tests simply vanished, entire worlds going silent overnight. The architects, Zara whispered, we thought them legend. Every legend has a grain of truth, Jake replied. He thought of Earth's own myths, of gods descending from the heavens to test humanity. What if they're real? What if they've been watching, waiting for both our species to reach some crucial point? The war, Korvax said suddenly. 2 spacefaring civilizations meeting in violence. Perhaps that is their trigger. They worked feverishly to decode more texts, cross-referencing with both species' astronomical data. A pattern emerged. Civilizations that had reached for the stars, encountered others, and chosen war over peace. All had faced judgment. None had survived. On the 30th day, as Jake's time grew short, they made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the Vorthax' oldest archives was a record of their first contact with another species, millennia ago. They had chosen peace then, forming an alliance that lasted centuries before the other species died out naturally. We were different once, Zara said softly, studying the records. We knew how to coexist. What changed? Jake asked. Fear. The Queen's voice answered from the doorway. She entered with her retinue, but her bearing seemed less imperious than before. The Shehar taught us much, but when they died, we were alone again. We vowed never to be vulnerable, never to depend on others. And look where it's brought us, Jake said, meeting her gaze. To the edge of extinction. The Queen studied the data they had compiled. You believe these architects will judge us? I believe they already are, Jake replied. The only question is whether we'll give them reason to spare us. On the 35th day, everything accelerated. Long-range sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies approaching from multiple directions. Not ships in any conventional sense, but distortions in space-time itself, bending reality around them. The War Council convened an emergency session. Mora Lin advocated immediate attack. We strike first with everything we have. Against enemies that disabled our fleet without firing a shot? Virathis countered. That's suicide. As they argued, Jake noticed Zara's skin cycling through rapid color changes, her way of processing extreme stress. He touched her arm gently, a gesture that would have been scandalous weeks ago but now felt natural. What if we give them what they want? He said suddenly. The council turned to him. Even after 35 days, many still bristled at a human speaking in their presence. Explain, the Queen commanded. They're testing us, Jake said, seeing if we'll choose violence or evolution. What if we show them we can change? Mora Lin scoffed. Surrender to appear weak? Not surrender, Jake insisted. Partnership. Real, immediate partnership between Earth and the Vorthak Empire. The room erupted in debate, but the Queen raised her hand. The human's time is nearly up. Let him finish. Jake stood, drawing on every ounce of courage he possessed. Your Majesty, you gave me 40 days to prove my worth. I've shown that humans and Vorthak can work together, can achieve more united than divided. But that's not enough. We need to demonstrate this unity to beings that could erase us all. What do you propose? The Queen asked. A joint task force, Jake said. Human and Vorthak ships. Working together to meet these architects, not with weapons but with proof that we can transcend our nature. Impossible, Moralin spat. Our peoples are enemies. Are we? Jake looked at Zara, then at the scientists who had become colleagues, even friends. Or is that just what we chose to be? The debate raged for hours. As the 39th day ended and the 40th began, the gravitational anomalies grew stronger. The architects were almost upon them. Finally, the Queen stood. I have decided. We will attempt the humans' plan, not because I believe it will succeed, but because all other options lead to certain death. Preparations began immediately. Jake worked to coordinate with Earth's remaining forces, convincing them to stand down and join with their former enemies. It wasn't easy. Trust had to be built in hours that should have taken years. Zara never left his side, translating, mediating, bridging two species with her unique perspective. As they worked, she spoke quietly. Whatever happens, I want you to know something. What's that? Saving me was not your greatest act. It was showing me that my hope for peace was not foolish. Her 4 eyes shimmered with emotion. You gave me the courage to stand before my people and demand better. The joint fleet assembled just as the architects arrived. Their ships, if they could be called ships, defied perception. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, surfaces that hurt to look at directly. Jake stood on the bridge of a hybrid command center, human and Vorthak technology merged in desperate cooperation. Zara stood beside him, their translated words reaching both fleets. Unknown vessels, Jake broadcast. We are human and Vorthak, former enemies now united. We seek peaceful contact. The response came not through communication systems, but directly into their minds. Images, concepts, judgments that spanned millennia. Jake saw civilizations rise and fall, species that chose violence and vanished, others that transcended and joined something greater. You stand at the crossroads. The architects spoke without words. 2 paths before you. Choose. On the screens, Jake saw Earth and the Vorthak homeworld simultaneously. He saw the fear, the hope, the desperate faith that ancient enemies could become allies. We choose together, he said aloud, his hand finding Zara's. Around them, humans and Vorthak stood side by side, their differences suddenly insignificant against the vastness of what they faced. The architects were silent for a long moment that felt like eternity. Then, slowly, their impossible ships began to shift, revealing structures of breathtaking beauty, gateways to somewhere else, somewhere beyond. You have chosen wisely, came the thought. The path is open to those who can walk together. The crisis passed, leaving 2 species forever changed. The war ended not with victory or defeat, but with the recognition that they were both small players on a vast cosmic stage. In the weeks that followed, as peace treaties were signed and the work of rebuilding began, Jake found himself in the Queen's throne room once more. But this time, he was not alone. Delegates from Earth stood beside Vorthak nobles, planning a future neither had imagined. Commander Harrison, the Queen said formally, your 40 days have passed. The right of preservation is fulfilled. You are free to return to your people. Jake looked at Zara, who stood with her sisters. Moralin still glowered, but without the murderous intent of before. Viridis actually nodded respectfully. With respect, Your Majesty, Jake said. My place is here. Someone needs to help build the bridges between our peoples. The Queen's expression might have been a smile. Then you shall be our first human ambassador. Though I suspect my daughter would have something to say if you chose otherwise. Zara's skin flushed deep purple, but she moved to stand beside him. Mother, the ancient laws speak of life bonds formed in crisis. I would invoke that right. The court gasped. Life bonds were sacred, transcending species. For a princess to claim one with a human. You realize what you ask? The Queen said softly. I do, Zara replied. He saw me not as enemy or alien, but as a person worth saving. That vision saved both our species. The Queen stood, descended from her throne, and did something unprecedented. She bowed slightly to Jake. Then let it be so. You who saved my daughter shall become my son. Later, standing before the great window overlooking the combined fleet, Jake and Zara watched their peoples working together. Ships that had been built for war now carried supplies for rebuilding. Former enemies shared technology, knowledge, hope. No regrets? Zara asked. Jake thought of that moment in his fighter, choosing between duty and instinct. One choice had led to all of this: peace, understanding, a future beyond anything he'd imagined. None, he said firmly. That day I saved you was the day we saved ourselves. Zara leaned against him, her alien warmth comforting now. The architects were right. We do better together. In the distance, the gateways they'd left behind shimmered with possibility. Humanity and Vorthak would grow, explore, face new challenges, but they would face them together, two species bound by the courage of individuals who chose compassion over conflict. The war was over. The real journey had just begun, and in the vast cosmos, the architects watched and approved. Another civilization had passed the test, chosen evolution over extinction. The universe grew a little brighter, a little more hopeful, all because one human pilot followed his heart instead of his orders, and one alien princess dared to believe in peace.